Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a thought experiment that honestly completely blew my mind. We're looking at the true nature of trust, absolute power, and the whole concept of an unbreakable promise. It uses this incredibly powerful allegory of a royal decree to deconstruct, well, why promises are made in the first place, why they fall apart, and what it logically means when the entity making the promise has literally unlimited power. It's just a brilliant piece of deductive reasoning, and honestly, by the end of this, the way you think about trust and reliability, it might be fundamentally changed.
So, let's start with Section 1, Foundation of Trust.
I want you to take a second and actively reflect on your own personal experiences. Think about trustworthy people versus, let's just say, less than reliable people. Because that contrast is the anchor for this entire concept, right? We all have that one friend or colleague whose word is just as good as gold. When they say they're going to do something, you consider it done. But on the flip side, we all know someone whose "I'll be there in 5 minutes" actually means, yeah, I haven't even showered yet. We instinctively calibrate our trust based on history, based on capability. We're subconsciously calculating the odds of them actually following through. So keep that human baseline in the back of your head as we scale this whole concept up. What's really fascinating here is how this isolates the very motivation for deception. It challenges us to find a logical reason for a supreme being to lie. I mean, think about it. In the human realm, deception is almost always a tool, right? It's used out of necessity, fear, or maybe a desire to gain some kind of advantage. People lie to protect themselves, to get something they don't have, or just to save face. But if an entity already possesses absolute power and supreme honor, they literally have nothing to fear, nothing to hide, and absolutely nothing to gain by lying. The very motivation for deception, it just vanishes into thin air. Moving on to Section 2, the Sultan's Decree. This illustrates the sheer weight of a supreme promise being made. In the source text, the Sultan makes an absolute guarantee of a future reality based entirely on present actions. I mean, the stakes could not be higher. It's not some vague promise that, oh, things will get better tomorrow. No, it is a definitive binary outcome. Reward for the obedient, imprisonment for the rebellious. The subjects are essentially being asked to orient their entire lives around this single monumental decree. Now, think about the massive asymmetry here. For us, the subjects in this allegory, this promise is everything. It dictates our entire existence, our behavior, our ultimate fate. It's monumentally important. But for the Sultan, representing a supreme creator, fulfilling this cosmic promise requires absolutely zero effort. Zero strain. It doesn't tax his resources. It doesn't deplete some cosmic treasury. See, we often project our own human limitations onto higher powers, right? We think, wow, big promises are hard to keep. But the source text forces us to realize that for an entity of infinite capability, actualizing a massive promise is literally as effortless as speaking it in the first place. All right, Section 3, 2 reasons for broken promises. So the crucial takeaway here is that human promises only break down in this binary way. Think about it. When someone breaks a promise to you, it ultimately boils down to one of two things: ignorance or weakness. Either the person didn't foresee the obstacles, like maybe they promised to meet you at noon, but were totally ignorant of a massive pileup on the highway. That's ignorance. Or they fully understood the situation, but simply weren't strong enough, rich enough, or capable enough to overcome the obstacles. They wanted to help you, but they lacked the actual power to act. And that's weakness. Literally, every broken promise you've ever experienced is rooted in one of these two human limitations. Now, let's cross-examine those two human flaws against the definition of a supreme being from our text. The Sultan represents an entity possessing absolute knowledge of all things and infinite power over all conditions. And when we apply this definition, the logic falls into place just beautifully. Absolute knowledge instantly deletes the possibility of ignorance. There are no unforeseen traffic jams or surprise variables for a supreme being. None. And infinite power completely erases the possibility of weakness. There is no obstacle too heavy to lift. When you put these two absolute truths together, the results are completely undeniable. Because when you stack these logical premises together, you get an airtight philosophical proof. We've established the entity cannot be ignorant, so they didn't make a mistake in their forecasting. We've established they cannot lack power, so they won't be thwarted by circumstances. Furthermore, as we touched on earlier, breaking a promise for no reason would totally contradict their inherent absolute honor. So when you add all these premises up, the conclusion isn't just that going back on their word is unlikely. No, it shows that for an omniscient, omnipotent entity to break a promise actually defies logic. It's a mathematical and philosophical impossibility. Which brings us to part 4.
An unshakable promise. The final conclusion.
The text brings in this specific verse from the Quran, Surah Ibrahim, verse 47. And based on everything we've just covered, it's amazing how the logic and the theology lock together perfectly here. The verse commands the reader to never think that the promise will fail. Why? Because as we've logically proven through the allegory of the Sultan, a failure of that promise would require either ignorance or weakness. And both of those are completely incompatible with the very definition of supreme authority. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take this final thought experiment with you. When you compare a reliable person to an unreliable one, your trust is based on their track record, right? Their track record of avoiding ignorance and overcoming weakness. But when you scale that up to a supreme power, you aren't just dealing with a good track record, you are dealing with the absolute absence of those flaws entirely. Apply this framework of knowledge and power to the things you place your absolute faith in today. Because if ultimate reliability requires an absolute absence of human flaws, you really have to ask yourself, in a world built on fragile promises, where is your ultimate trust truly anchored?